Greetings! It's the third episode of this podcast. And today we are talking about expectations versus intentions. Are you living your life through expectations, or are you intentionally living? I ask this question because most of us learn how to live with holding expectations on our livelihood versus living through intentional living. And the way that I discern how to see or differ apart from one another, the expectations versus the intentions of living. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times when we set expectations, we will do it from this mindset of, oh, this has to happen this certain way, or I will be upset. Oh, this has to happen. This has to be very specific to how I get this, right? Notice we're going to talk a little bit about the connotative meanings. Get versus utilizing the word receive, right? When we are getting something, we're doing it through a forceful action versus receiving and allowing it to align into place for whatever circumstance that we're living through. And that's why when you set these expectations, it's very forceful versus living with the just living with the intentions that you set, because through here it would be receiving. You would be in receiving mode versus forcing stuff to happen when you don't feel aligned to it. A lot of times people are living with the expectations mindset. Let's get into the words. I'm going to define these words. Expectation definition. A strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. A belief that someone will or should connotative-wise means you are setting a judgment that into place. It means that you are setting a judgment that you are the one to be the judge for said situation. And then with intentions, it's a thing that's intended, an aim or a plan. The healing process of a wound. I didn't know that's what the medicine definition is of intention. The more we learn. But think about expectation, right? A strong belief that something will happen or be the case in the future. A belief that someone will or should achieve something versus the intention definition, which is a thing that's intended, an aim or a plan. Recently, I've come into an awareness for life. When it comes to my projects, they are pretty much arrows that I'm aiming. Wherever the arrow hits, its target is where it's going to hit. Sometimes I will miss the target. Sometimes I'll go way past the target and hit something else that brings more enlightenment than what I thought the target would, and what I originally aimed for. Whereas before, I would take an axe, and I would throw that axe with so much strength, and that was my expectation. I only aimed for the target. Whereas my arrows, I think the target is what we're going to actually focus on. But the axe are my expectations. The arrows are the axe or arrows could be either or. Let's think about the target. The target is what my focus is on. And a lot of times we get so focused on the target itself that becomes expectations. And we don't realize the arrow for which we aim can go over the target. For whatever reason, I was having technical difficulties, and that's okay. We're gonna continue doing the recording now. What I was saying, let's focus on the target being the focus, right? A lot of us will have this targeted focus. Whatever your goals are, whatever your intentions are, whatever your desired reality is, right? A lot of us will just keep shooting for this target. And a lot of times we will land on the target in different places and not always bullseye. And when we hit any place on the target that doesn't hit bullseye, it's because we shot this aim, we let go of the arrow, we did our shot. And when we land on that target, but not in the expected bullseye of the area, we have this feeling of disappointment because we have put the expectations onto it. We had made this bullseye our focus. And we don't realize that if we land anywhere else on that target, we still get points. And it's not about the points. It's not about achieving or succeeding. It's more so realizing in that moment when we don't always land on bullseye, it shows us where we put the expectations onto it. Because a lot of times we will end up being disappointed because it's not what we expected it to be. And if you're going to expect anything, I always give this piece of advice to anyone that's listening or open to listening. I'm always like, hey, always expect the unexpected. Because we're going to have expectations. We're going to get disappointed here and there. And at least when we expect the unexpected, we expected the unexpected. It's going to be like, oh, I did not expect this one. And let's get back to the target. When we aim intentions, we'll aim for the target, right? But sometimes that arrow is going to completely miss the target and land on like something super unexpected. It's going to be more aligned to what we're actually desiring versus the expectations that we put onto said desired reality. Like we put an idea onto this reality, right? We ideated what this desired reality is going to be like. So, for example, say you want to be famous, right? Think about what comes with being famous. Not a lot of people, but I've seen people who have become famous that have decided to just go private and decide that is not the lifestyle that they want for themselves. It is not their desired reality, meaning the attention that you get. A lot of people are not desiring the attention that you might get from having that level of fame or that level of an audience just watching your every move, quotation. And then there are people that desire having like certain lifestyles where they don't realize they attach the idea of money to happiness. And when they have the money, they aren't happy. When they have that money or that certain lifestyle, they attach the idea of being happy to that lifestyle. And once they get to that lifestyle, they become very disappointed because they attach that certain ideation to this lifestyle, to this desired reality. Like I said, it's all about the expectations or the intentions that you put out there. And a lot of times people will attach these ideas, for those watching, and if you're just listening, I'm doing like the blah 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 hand motion that one would make. That means, for me, I feel like that's like the chatter in your head. Because you don't realize you're going to hear a can. Let's see if you can get the ASMR. Don't know if this this laptop might pick that up for you, but hopefully it did. Like I said, a lot of people will attach ideas to certain manifestations, to certain desired realities, like having their happiness attached to the outcome of said desired reality. And it's like what I said in one of these episodes, a lot of times people will manifest or set this desired reality. Oh, I want to move to this state because this state has blah, 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 meaning happiness, friends, or whatever. They set this idea into their desired reality. And once they get to that place, they realize they're going to feel a little bit of disappointment because of this expectation that they put out there with this said state, that this said state's not going to bring what they were desiring all along. And I try to, when I do hear someone say they want to move to a certain state, I just try to bring awareness and say, hey, don't attach your happiness, making friends, feeling safe, or whatever came to your mind when you want to move to a certain state. Because, or even a country. A lot of times it starts within. It starts with us doing it right now. We can come into that happiness. We can come into that feeling safe where we're at now. It really is what our focus is on. And once we get so caught up into this visualization or this imagination of psychosis that we put ourselves in, thinking that this one place will be what makes me happy. Do not attach your happiness or expectations to that desired reality. Go to a place that you want to go to because it's the place itself, that you want to experience the culture, that you want to experience the people, that you want to experience the state for what it is. Make sure that when you are doing these intentions, that they aren't actually disguised. Make sure that these intentions aren't disguised as false intentions, and they're actually just expectations. Because I know that the experience having moved to different states, like by myself, I have come into this realization that I put ideas and expectations on states. I ended up I have become disappointed, even though I have manifestation coaches that told me not to do this, and now here I am reiterating it. And even though I tell you these things, you probably wouldn't get the full grasp of what it is until you go through the experience yourself. I bring this awareness for when you do experience it, because until you actually experience it, you're not going to understand what I'm saying, and this is just more so awareness for those that haven't been through it and are putting those expectations out there. But this is also to bring awareness and knowledge to anyone that's willing to listen, you know? It's all about being open to listen, and the first step to anything is awareness of whatever it is that you're focusing on. With that being said, as someone that's done the whole expectations route, I had realized the place that I moved away from, this place, actually was my desired reality the whole time. I just had put expectations of being like happy or feeling safe or finding a community when that was already all here. It was me providing that for myself rather than seeking outer validation without myself, rather than just going within, you know? I already have the tools within my own soul, mind, and body. It was just going out into the world and realizing that, and having many dark nights of the soul, as one would like to call it. What is the dark night of the soul, you say? I'm going to look at the definition, because I would rather give you the definition of it, because you won't understand until you actually have been through the ringers, I like to joke. So, I just want to see how someone can describe this. It says the dark night of the soul is a stage of final and complete purification and is marked by confusion, helplessness, stagnation of the will, and the sense of withdrawal of God's presence. I personally wouldn't call this the definition of that, but it's a definition that someone put out there. Let's look at the Buddhist one. In this text, he refers to the dark night as part of a process of death and rebirth which occurs during insight meditation, and which involves the gradual dissolution of personal identity. I like what Eckhart Tolle has. He's a good author. Let's read this. I'm going to link this specific note under the description for everyone who wants to check out this link. So disregard the two previous definitions. That one was like a religious take, one was a Buddhist take. But Eckhart Tolle, he pretty much says what it feels like when you're going through a dark night of the soul. It's a kind of rebirth. The dark night of the soul is a kind of death that you die. What dies is the egoic sense of self. Of course, death is always going to be painful. But it's pretty much, in a sense, the best way that I can describe it, the best definition that I can provide to someone who what the dark night of the soul is from my own experience, because I've had many dark nights of the soul. It's not just one. It's like this expansive, feeling that you have when everything that you knew isn't what it actually seems. It's like when everything you thought you knew was the truth, but you go through this dark night of the soul when you realize your ego has been driving you up this fucking hill of ego and thinking it's your sense of self when really it was your ego driving you versus your intuition. You have these moments of, oh my god, how have I been going at this altitude of being so far up my own, like with my head so far up my own ass? How have I been running around like a chicken without its head? And it's super, like, you have a super depression. It's not like, I personally have severe depression and severe anxiety. It's not like that. It's like everything you knew it to be no longer is, and you can't keep on living the way you're living because you realize how self-destructive it is. You realize how harmful it is to others, and the presence of being around you. If you keep going at the rate that you're going, you're just gonna end up digging a hole for yourself type of depression. If you find yourself doing these actions that you know aren't for the betterment of your soul, and you just in this self-destructive behavior of not doing anything for yourself, you're gonna find yourself in that dark night of the soul. And you almost pity yourself, but then you're in that moment where you're like, I put myself in this situation type thing. So that's where the dark nights of the soul will come through and make you feel like, oh my God, you face a lot of darkness. It's because darkness of the soul will happen when you're avoiding your own darkness, when you choose not to utilize your darkness in a healthy coping mechanism type of way. You will find yourself in this dark night of the soul because you've been avoiding the truth of what your darkness is, and you haven't been feeding that part of yourself. You've kind of just been starving it, and now it's this rage, this bottled up emotions of an animal that you kept in a cage, and now it's just going to release upon itself. It's going to explode, and you're just going to have to deal with the aftermath of it exploding, and then you're just sitting there with yourself. You're just sitting there like, oh my God, what the fuck did I do? And then you get into that mindset. Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening to me? Why is this happening for me? And that was where I learned that for the first time, actually. My first dark night of the soul was probably one of the most intense ones I've ever had. And now that I've experienced enough to say, it's what each new dark night of the soul, of course, is going to be more intense than the previous one. But once you realize and you are aware that it's happening, you're just like, okay, let me go with the flow of this rather than fight it like a riptide, and then I'll end up drowning if I fight against it. I gotta go with the flow with this, It's a rip current. It's gonna take me under if I try to fight it, because it's a dark night of the soul. And I believe dark nights of the soul is just one big, expansive energy that we tap into, that we channel into, rather than just it being one entity for one night. And this doesn't happen at nighttime. It can happen during any time of the day, and you're just like, what the fuck am I doing right now? I think that I went from that to this. Just be mindful for yourself where you would be putting these expectations out, because they could be disguised as intentions, but they're not actually intentions. As I said, I've put these expectations out, moved to these states with these ideas attached to them, rather than enjoying the state for what it is, enjoying the state for, because once it was like a couple months in and I've had those dark nights of the soul, I'm like, oh my goodness, I put these expectations onto these states. And I will say Minnesota was that state for me where I put these expectations, and then I had a very dark night of the soul. I had to isolate myself, and I kind of isolated not even kind of, let's face it for what it is. I isolated myself from the people that are important to me in Minnesota itself. And if they ever see this, see it for what it is. I isolated myself when I was going through some mental demons, and I'm not justifying that. I just hope y'all are doing good. Y'all see me during my darkest moments of my life so far. And I appreciate y'all for holding that space for me during that time of my life. And then once I realized the whole understanding of expectations versus intentions, when I moved to Indiana, I did have some of that the residual and the energy of holding the expectations to a state. I had some disappointments, and then the more I experienced that, the more I was like, oh, let's just have intentional living. And now I'm back in Florida. Side note, I'm here for my mom, Melissa. We'll talk more about it when the time allows, when the space has been created to do so. And yeah. I now live with that mindset of creating space to have intentional living versus living with expectations. Living with expectations mean that you are limiting yourself. A lot of us limit ourselves with these expectations. We won't allow it to be an ever-expansive open-mindedness that we could experience otherwise had we not have these expectations. And I know that some people will come to this podcast with the mindset of, oh, but if we didn't have expectations for us, how can we succeed in life? How can we achieve? Just think about those words alone. It sounds like you're living from the sense of trying to be competitive about everything you do. Like life is a competition, life is a game. When for myself, that's not even a part of the reality of what I desire. I desire to live intentional. I desire to live of ease, because I feel like when you make life a competition, and I say this because some people will have this competitive stance of like, when someone's like listening to their worries, they then come back onto them like, well, for example, they'll talk about the issues that they're going through, and then they make it a competition or a contest of which life has it worse, who has it worse, and I'm like, that's not healthy for whoever is dealing with that. For whoever is doing that, for whoever's experiencing that from someone that they're trying to vent to about their issues, that is not healthy. That is not a safe space for people. When you come at them and they're venting to you about this issue that they're having, about this trauma they experienced, you just come at them with, you just come at them with the whole mindset of, you just start comparing, or you'll say something that you want to do rather than doing active listening and then speaking when they pause, when they're done venting. It's very interesting to see how someone will interject and speak like that, because you see that they kind of live with this mindset of everything's a competition. They subconsciously do so. They don't really realize that they're doing that in the moment of. So that's why I give them grace. I don't invalidate myself in the process. But again, we shall never seek validation from anyone but our individual selves. And yes, people will try to invalidate the fuck out of you, and they will do so if you let them. Just know that you're valid within yourself, and you don't need to seek validation from anyone else. I don't know what the next focus will be for our next episode, but I feel like this is a good way to end this specific episode. I appreciate you. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. As always, much love to you and your journey. I appreciate you.